disgraced and ashamed, afraid to walk the line again. Controlled for too many years, but never once forgiven for my sins. And I never thought I'd say that I'm weaker today than I was yesterday, oh man. But I'll fight as I always fight, with what's inside of me, this warrior spirit inside of me. I don't know if I can say I've lived through everything, but I've walked this earth alone, with bare feet broken in the snow. And my father said to me, it never seems to be a simple walk down an icy cold broken road.
Hi, I'm Leanne, and I was born May 1st, 1976. I was born to Regina Gonzalez and Thomas Blankenship. What can I tell you? I don't know what true story is why they lost custody of us. Drugs, prostitution, abuse, neglect. We've heard all the stories. But they did lose custody of us. There's me, my older sister, and a half-sister that's younger. My birth father's brother adopted my older sister and I because we belong to that family line and obligations of family. I wish obligations of family was not a thing, because our life was a living hell. Sexual abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse, neglect, being told exactly why we were not loved by our grandparents, being called wetbacks because our mom is a different race. But we did survive that. And they ended up giving us back to our birth father because the school that I was attending at the time in 1989 got wind of the abuse, mostly because I ended up getting swim class in the middle of the school year and had scars up and down my back. Didn't know that I even had them. It had been at least a week since my last spanking, or what they called spankings. And they shipped me out to my birth father. My sister had already been shipped out there. Something inside me altered as I crossed state lines from Michigan to Ohio. In Michigan, I was a small little kid, never spoke back, did what I was told, rarely ever broke the rules. I was extremely submissive. But when I crossed state lines into Ohio to live with my birth father, I was no longer submissive. I was no longer afraid. I don't know why I was no longer afraid, but I wasn't. So I fought back against the abuse that we endured there. It wasn't always pleasant, and maybe I was a little stuck up because he lived in severe poverty and stuff. But that still didn't excuse some of the abuse that we went through. And one day, after everybody else had gone to school, he took his girlfriend at the time and my half-brother, Rob, and I out on a little road trip. We went into this building and he told us to have a seat. So we did. We sat down and waited while he disappeared into this door. I looked around. It was nice. The sun shining in through the glass doors. It was snowy outside, which made it even more pretty. The sun just glistened off of there. Sort of like a new hope coming. Inside, bare white walls, benches lined on one side, doors on the other. Then he came out and said, let's go. So we all stood up. He said, not you. Told me to sit back down. So I sat there, watched them walk out that door. All of a sudden, that door wasn't showing brightness and great future, but cold, hard, empty. Just like the hallway that I sat in. To a child, it felt like hours that I sat there. Maybe it was only minutes, but to me it felt like it was hours sitting there. Then this lady came out of the door that he had disappeared through, told me to follow her, and I did. Followed her back into this office space, a bunch of little cubicles all over the place, and again, I sat. Sat while she did paperwork, not knowing what was going on, not knowing who she was, didn't even know what building I was in. Why was I being left behind? I wanted the abuse to end, but I didn't want to be separated from my sister, and I didn't want to be alone. But that's exactly how I felt, with a room full of people I did not know, sitting there watching her do paperwork. Again, seeming like hours, before finally she told me that we're going to go for a ride. We went for a ride, and we drove up to this building, huge fence overlooking it, big parking lot, a huge building. Never seen anything like that before. I was a little intimidated, scared even. She took me inside, told me this is where I would be living at. They took me upstairs to a female bathroom, had me stripped down in front of them, gave me this shampoo that stunk really bad and stung when it touched my skin, and I was told to use it from head to toe. Never smelled anything so rank in my life. Supposedly, it's to kill lice and every other germ or disease that you could possibly have had back in 1989. Then I was taken downstairs, and as we came down the stairs, I noticed that the hallway went one way where we originally came in, and then it went off into the other, which kind of looked like a living room, but there was this boxed in area which was called the staff room. And then next to the staff room was this door with a little tiny window with bars on it. That's the room I was put in. I was put into a room with little tiny bars looking out, watching everybody else. And throughout the day, everybody, male and females that lived there, came by to see the new girl, the fresh meat as they called it. That was my first night as a foster kid. I didn't even know the word foster kid, and it was still a long time after that before I even learned what a foster child was, what the system was. Because granted, I had already been one, but I was an infant. Don't remember any of that. But I do remember my time as a foster kid. And when asked which would I prefer, my time as a foster kid or the time with my birth father or with my adopted parents with all that abuse, which one would I have picked? If I had a choice, none. But I definitely wouldn't want to have to repeat being a foster kid, because it's made me hard. It made me hate the world. It made it harder for me to get jobs, keep jobs, relationships. Granted, I would have stayed as submissive and probably ended up in abusive relationships one after another, but now I don't even do relationships. My time as a foster kid was not pleasant. There's a joke among my case managers that I had that I was in over 100 placements between November 1989 to June 1994. That's not a long time, 13 to 18 to be in foster care and live in so many different places. I couldn't accumulate to being a foster kid. I didn't want to call these strangers mother, father. I didn't want to be told I can't hang out with friends after school. If I was 2 seconds late walking through the door, they would call the cops saying that I ran away just because I spent a few moments talking to kids after school. In the summer, I had to work. As soon as I turned 16, I had to go to work. And as soon as out of work, where everybody else was going to the local pool area, swimming, having fun, hanging out, being kids, I had to go to my foster parents' job and work there for free. And if I wasn't working at their place of employment that they owned, I was working at their home, taking care of the kids, cleaning. I was never a child. At least with my birth father and my adopted parents, I occasionally got to act like a child. Yeah, I had to do a lot of the cleaning and stuff, but at least I could still go out and ride my bike. At least I could still occasionally hang out with my friend that lived next door. Wasn't allowed to hang out with anybody from school, but the girl next door who they could keep supervision on, they would allow that. So it's a hit or miss. But in this program that I started, I've learned something. And it took me a long time to learn the same lessons that other people have told me. Everybody said, oh, you're doing so well. You've earned your bachelor's, you're working on your master's. You're traveling, you're doing this, you're doing that. But in reality, I wasn't okay. Yes, I was substituting education for things. I was moving and doing things because I didn't have kids tying me down and stuff. But I'm not happy inside. I wasn't, as I've learned in this program, my master's program, I hadn't adjourned from being a foster kid. And my master's at Woodbury University is in organizational leadership. And I took it thinking it will help me become a better leader at jobs that I have or companies that I plan on starting to help foster kids, if I can ever figure out how to start them and get the money. But sitting there in class, I realized these lessons that we're learning on how to be leaders in the workplace isn't just for the workplace. It's also for your personal life. The norming, the storming, the journeying, all that belongs inside with us, with the lives that we live. Because as a foster kid, we learn how to enter into different types of groups, how to socialize. But we fail to realize that we become institutionalized in the foster care system. Us as foster kids think differently, act differently. We don't stop to think of how somebody else is going to react to us because we're around other foster kids. I know this is going to be a bad analogy, but think of it. If you've been in prison your whole life and you come out and you're around mainstream society, around the free society, you don't know how to function because you've been locked up so long. Foster kids are the same way. Although you may have been in a foster home and not a detention center or a group home, but you're still institutionalized on how to behave because we are treated differently by society. We are treated differently by the families that take us in, by the group homes, by the detention centers. Even the schools we attend treat us differently. And that becomes part of who we are. But we have to let that go in order to achieve more, to understand how to survive in the world, in what we could call normal world, the free society, or a civilian world if you like military terms. It's taken me a while, but sitting in these classes has taught me a few things. Not only to be a better leader at the workplace, but in my own personal life. Because if I plan on starting companies that's going to help foster kids, don't I first need to start working on myself, showing them not only can you go to school, can you get jobs and stuff, but that you can adjourn from being a foster kid, that you can achieve more in life, that you don't need to have it hold you back. Yes, we survived it. No, we don't need to forget about it, but we do need to learn how to move on away from it. We need to learn how to understand that the things that's happened to us in our past, do not dictate who we will be in the future. One of the books, and probably the only book that I actually liked from the program, is Leadership and Self-Deception, Getting Out of the Box. That is exactly what we are in. Maybe not exactly the way he describes it in the book, but we are living in a box. We're living in a box because we won't let go. I don't know how many times I've said, why should I have to change who I am when society should learn how to accept me for who I am? But in reality, that's not how things work. If I want that good job, if I want that relationship, if I want this, want that, want, I need to change who I am to fit into society's mold while retaining my individuality, my strength, my determination, my ability in order to survive anything that comes my way. I need to be able to do it with a happiness, with smiles, with love, without having to remember, well, I don't like this situation because this is what happened to me in foster care. You can't do that. So, how do you get out of the box? First, you need to realize that you are in a box. Second, you need to stop worrying about other people. First, internalize yourself. Others around you are going to say you can't change, that it's not going to happen. It's going to take longer for the people next to you to notice the change than those that will come across you and stuff. And that's going to be the hardest part, is because people are going to keep tearing you down, telling you you can't change, that you're not going to change, and start reminding you, well, you said this, well, you said that. You just have to remind them you are trying to get out of that box. You need to realize what you want in life. You have to think of your goals. What kind of job do you want? Where would you like to live? How would you like to live? Now, you're not going to go overnight living from poverty up to $1 million mansion. We need to be realistic here. But you can aim high enough to get out of a bad situation to help lead you up to that road. It's not saying it's impossible. It's just going to take time and effort. I am not the smartest person. My schooling as a foster kid, as many of you know, is not always the best, especially when you move around so much. But put on top of that, I'm dyslexic. So even when I was put into mainstream schools, I was not put into mainstream classes all the time. So my education didn't go up very high. And when I turned 18, I was released from foster care. No high school diploma. I went back to Michigan thinking that I would be able to enter into the high school that I should have been attending all along. But they wouldn't take me because I had no parents, I had no guardians, and I was 18. Nobody was responsible for me. So, after trying several schools and trying adult ed, and learning that they wanted me to redo 3 years of school when I only had 1 year left, that wasn't cutting it. So I entered Job Corps. Biggest mistake of my life. Biggest lies ever told to me. But I did receive my GED from them, which is what led me to pursue education so much, because I didn't want to be labeled as the person who only had a GED. I was already labeled as being dumb because of it, so getting a GED on top of being dyslexic just didn't sit right with me, especially in the area and the time when GED was not popular, when it wasn't appropriate to have one. And a lot of the jobs I wanted, I would have never gotten with just a GED. So I started college. Failed miserably, but I took the classes I enjoyed. I was into criminal justice, so guess what classes I picked? Homicide, crime scene investigation. Classes that were for the upper grade levels. I was taken as an entry college student who hadn't even received a GED yet. But I enjoyed the classes, dropped out, failed the ones that I did drop out of. It took me years before finally going back to school, which is after hitchhiking to California in '97. In '99, I decided to start college. And luckily, the community college I went to had a disabled student center, which is something I never knew existed. But they helped me. They helped me pick the teachers that were encouraging. They helped me plan my classes so I wasn't taking classes that were outside my league before it was time to take them. And I eventually received 2 AA degrees, one from California, one from back in Michigan. And I entered my bachelor's. I got my 2 bachelors from Saginaw Valley State University, one in criminal justice, one in theater. My 2 passions in life, film and art. So I thought I was on my way. I had gotten the 2 degrees that I loved, went back to California, because I thought that was the only place I could work film and work in criminal justice. Bad timing, because in 2008 there were no jobs in California, at least in criminal justice. And the film industry is a lot harder to break into than what we think. Didn't plan it out very well. But I've been here. I've been working on the things I enjoy. I did go back to community college to get some more criminal justice classes and forensics and stuff, but also to do film school, because I realized theater is fun, but it's not as fun as being on a film set. But there was things that I didn't know that I needed to learn. And so I went to LA City College for film, learned a lot of it. But I still wasn't happy with my education. There was still something missing. So I got into a master's program at Woodbury University in organizational leadership. As I already stated, I had done it thinking that it would help me get better jobs, get the promotions, get the job titles that I was already doing or capable of doing and stuff, and not feeling like the ant in the farm. I wanted to be the queen bee. Don't we all want to be that queen bee? Want to be telling everybody else what to do and not being told what to do? But the program didn't start off too well. My dyslexia cut in with the writing of the papers. And then my personal opinion against the things that were going on, mostly me using my childhood as a foster kid to block a lot of what people were trying to tell me. And then it dawned on me that I was using my time as a foster kid to hold myself back. Yeah, there was a lot of obstacles, people that were standing in my way, but I allowed them because I had never adjourned from being a foster kid. I was living in that box. So I started thinking of how to get out of it. What was it that I wanted? I realized that I was in the box. I realized I needed to get out of the box. And I started setting goals for myself. My goals: write a couple of books, more than a couple if I can, get at least one of them published. Make movies that I enjoy. Not just what Hollywood will put out there and stuff, but ones that I like. Ones that I'm happy doing. May not be the blockbuster, but at least it's my project, it's my heart. I don't need to live in Hollywood to do that. I would like to get a job in criminal justice, preferably forensics or probation. Because probation and parole, you get to be both the hard ass and the softy. You get to teach them and punish them. What better job than that? And go back to my original goal. One that I had when I was a foster kid, but thought I was impossible. I want to start a company that will help foster kids while they are in the system and once they get out of the system. Because while they're in the system, especially in states like California where they have lots of money for it, there are programs. In the smaller towns, like in Lawrence County, Ohio, where I was a foster kid, there weren't many programs. Smaller towns, there's not much opportunity. So I want to help in that way. But why after foster care? ends, because it's hard finding a job. It's hard finding a place to live. Not all foster parents are going to keep you afterwards. Mine didn't. Mine threw me out before I was even released from foster care. My sister's foster parents kicked her out after realizing she had a relationship with their grandson because she would corrupt him. So a lot of people in the foster care system like us as long as we don't interfere with their lives or their children's life or their grandkids. So after I got out of foster care, I became homeless. My sister was pretty much on the verge of it. She went up and down. Me, I pretty much stayed down in homeless shelters and stuff like that. Hell, I hitchhiked across country because I didn't want to be homeless in Michigan in the middle of winter. Figure if I'm going to be homeless, might as well do it in California where it's nice and sunny. Took me 2 weeks to walk it and get rides and stuff. And back then, I was actually kept safe doing it. Didn't have to do anything that I didn't want to, or I was immoral or got hurt or anything like that. People don't believe it, but hey, I wouldn't recommend you trying it, because I also have a different personality and persona that's let off that most people don't have. And the goddesses and gods have protected me through lots of crap in my life. A lot of it that I've done to myself. And they've still stood there to make sure that I survived it. So after you set your goals and you decide that you want to get out of the box, you have to then start working towards it. Mine happened to be education. My biggest thing was education. And now, after this project, if the teacher likes it, I'll have my master's. And I will eventually go and get my doctorates and stuff, because you can never stop at a master's. That's one of the golden rules. Get a master's, you gotta go on. But it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard getting out of the box. He talks about how we stay in the box because we have so many people around us that are in the box, and we allow ourselves to be dragged back into it. And it's hard because other people are not going to notice that you are out of the box or trying to stay out of the box, because they're going to remember who you were and only see that part of you. And it's up to you to change that. Sometimes it requires you moving away from those people. Sometimes you have to cut ties. Some friends are not worth having. You have to know what toxic friends are, toxic environment. There's so many different things that can interfere with our lives. Toxic environments. It's basically anything that's going to hold you down, keep you at a level that you don't like. Takes so much energy just to survive through it, just to be around the people, just to do whatever it is. Sometimes it's a job. And sometimes we can't say no to that job because that job pays your bills. But you know that it's toxic. You know that it's keeping you in the box. So what do? You look for another job that's going to be away from that toxic environment, that will get you out of that box, that will make you a happier person. And once you start realizing that, and you start cutting ties to being a foster kid, to that life that you used to be, that you're not anymore, then you can adjourn from that childhood, from that part of your life, and move on to the next cycle. I hope that you all can do it. I am still working on doing it. It's an everyday struggle. It's an everyday event, but you can do it. You just have to know what your goals are. Where do you want to end up? Where are you at now? What are the steps to get you to there? Is it cutting ties with friends and some family members? Is it cutting ties with a job you have and is making you miserable? It's just things that you have to learn along the way, and you decide what are you willing to sacrifice in order to get there. It's up to you. It's up to you to break the cycle. It's up to you to adjourn from being a foster kid and enter into mainstream society. so you can flourish and be a better person. So you don't have to dwell on the past. Don't forget it. Don't forgive it. I'm not telling you that. You've already survived it because you're still standing, you're still living, you're still kicking. But get over it. It's time to move on. It's a time to let the adjournment cycle begin and start anew. It's time to go into norming and storming into a different part of your life, not the foster kid part. It's time to step out of that box. It's up to you and how you're going to adjourn from your foster care life and how you're going to get yourself out of the box. May you live long and prosperous. May the goddesses and gods forever walk with you.
Time is going by so much faster than I'm starting to regret not spending all of it with you. Now I'm wondering why I've kept this bottle inside. So I'm starting